Hello! Welcome to my sewing diary where I document my sewing journey. This episode is about the Megan dress, which is from the book Love at First Stitch. Spoiler alert, I did not continue the dress past the mock-up stage because there were some fitting issues that I need some more information to figure out how to solve. However, I did figure out how to hack a Peter Pan collar into the dress. Looking back at the footage, I could tell that I had a lot of anxiety about this project from the start. I wanted to quit several times. So I've done the initial mock-up and I've tried it on, and at this point I wanted to just scrap the whole thing because there's just so many things wrong with this bodice. Like the neck feels like it's choking me. The arms feel too tight. This part is like way too high. And like even, you have to remember there's a 5/8 seam allowance here, so it's gonna be even higher. I think these little tucks here are awkward. I know that's a style, I just don't particularly like them. I think the darts also are coming in way too far in on me, so I'll probably have to change those as well. And the back, it's really difficult to see what it's gonna do. I did take some thread, which I've now pulled off of me, and I kind of like laced it through the back, and then like when I tried it on, I pulled it tight so that I could see what this was gonna do together. And the lower back seems pretty good, but the upper back looks like it's gonna do this puckering thing. Everything in me wants to just throw this out. So this is the dress partially assembled, and it's not nearly as bad as I thought. It still doesn't fit right, and like I wouldn't wear this because it's kind of making my arms fall asleep because there's like tightness here. And surprisingly, these aren't too tight, but there is like a lot of tightness in here, and it's like a little choky right here. I know like there's a seam allowance here, so this would come down a little bit lower, but it still feels really like uncomfortable. The book does not give any help with these fit issues, so I'm gonna have to read another book and try and see if I can fix this. I think I might need to actually get a zipper and install it because just holding it together, I can't really tell like how it's gonna fit in the back, but this part here is really obvious, and I think I'll work on that first before I bother installing a zipper. This is the book that I have that has like a little section on fitting. Yeah, there's my lovely napkin bookmark. Ignore that. So according to this, it says, like, it sounds like I need a square shoulder adjustment. What was the other one? Yeah, so the armholes are a little tight, so this says to make them a little larger. Okay, so this is what happens to my skirts. Now, I never thought of myself as one that had a large butt, but apparently that's what's going on. It says, wrinkles form between the waist and hip line with pulling that distorts side seams. Hemline is shorter in the back. Yep, that always happens. And then it says how to correct it, which I'm not gonna read that whole thing, but yeah, that diagram is exactly what happens. So I need a big butt adjustment, which kind of makes me giggle a little. I just went from hating this project to loving this project. Just with this one alteration. I did the thing where you slash the shoulders and then I put fabric underneath, and already like the arms feel so much better. My arm's no longer falling asleep. The armholes are no longer too small, so they fit fine now. It lowered the bodice slightly. I think I still need to lower it a tad more. But I'm super excited now about this change. It fits so much better. I had no idea I had square shoulders, and now things make so much more sense. Like, blouses don't always fit me right. I heard somebody say to do one adjustment at a time, and now it totally makes sense, because when I changed this, it also changed some of the other parts. At one point, I threw it in the corner and walked away for several months. The thing is, if I had just continued with this, at that time, I feel like this would fit. But since then, I waited months and months to work on this, and I lost a whole 2 inches in my bust and in my hips. So now I'm pretty much down an entire size, except for the waist. But I don't know, I feel like the waist should have about 2 inches of ease, and that might be enough. In the meanwhile, I learned some things from this. I pretty much learned that it's good to have 2 projects going on. One project that hurts your brain a little bit, and then another project that is a little more routine and a little easier, so that when you get stuck on the brain crunching project, you have something else to work on that will maintain your momentum. So you'll still be moving forward on something. And that way, like, it gets harder to start up again when I've stopped for a while. And so if I had another thing that I'd switched to, I would have still been sewing. And so, I mean, I could have done all sorts of things. I could have just switched to one of the skirt patterns in the book. Any number of things. I could have made myself an apron. So now I'm getting back into this, and in the future I will try not to have as long of a break, because you're kind of starting from scratch again. I changed sizes, so this mock-up might be not that useful, but gotta start somewhere. I started to recognize that the reason I throw a project in the corner and walk away is because of irrational anxiety. It's like I'm preemptively afraid of feeling something that I felt in the past when a dress didn't fit even before I try it on. Realizing that, I've decided to force myself to take baby steps on a project that I'm feeling anxious about. I've had the hardest time working on this project because I am just, every time I go to see the next version of the mock-up, I'm just like filled with anxiety before I try it on, and I've been kind of forcing myself to work on it just a few minutes a day at very least, and it's going really slowly. So I'm getting ready to draft my Peter Pan collar, and my theory is that I can take these facing patterns. I've got the front facing and the back facing, and I'm going to spin off of this to draw my Peter Pan collar. So I know that this is the shoulder seam here. I know that I need to take this seam allowance off. I'm basically going to use paper and assemble it as if it's the neckline, because it's the neckline line that I need. I'm sure there's another way to do this, but this is just what I came up with, so I'm rolling with it. So I folded it where the seam would have been, and now this is gonna give me my line. That kind of gives us the neckline. I'm basically going to make the line without the seam allowance, and then I'm going to add the seam allowance onto it. This is the center back. There's 5/8 here that is for installing the zipper. Another thing that I realized is that there is a seam allowance in this facing pattern. So I need to draw my collar the length that I want it from inside the seam allowance, from 5/8 inside of the seam allowance. I made dots where that line would be, and the collar is going to go out from there. I've traced the dots for where the seam allowance is, and now I'm going to measure 3 inches from the seam allowance. I don't even know if I'm gonna like a 3-inch collar, but we'll see, because I'll make one up, try it on, see what I think, and then I'll adjust it from there. So then I'll also need to add seam allowance here and all the way around. That is my final prototype of my collar. I have no idea if this is gonna work. I've done this before, but it was a really long time ago, and I have no idea how I even did it. I left the mark for the shoulder seam right there. I think normally patterns would have notches that are both on the neckline and on the collar for you to match up, but I don't have any of that. Now it's time to cut this out and sew it up and attach it and see if it actually works. Okay, so this is the next version of my mock-up, and I am way happier with this one. I've added the Peter Pan collar that I drafted, and I put on the sleeves. So it's a little snug in here. I ended up going back up to the size 4, and then I had to take in the darts in the back here to make the back kind of lay across my back, and that made it a lot more snug in here. And of course I have room to let it out in the side seams, except for I cut a size 3 skirt, so there's no room to like shift this on this version. But I know that like that's not gonna take much. If I had a size 4 skirt, there would be enough room in the seam that I could let it out a little bit to make up for the space that I took in the back. At first I thought the Peter Pan collar was a little bit too big, but I think I like it. I still have a little snugness here across the chest, and I don't know what to do about that. So on this version, I did a square shoulder adjustment, but I did it a lot less than the previous version. I only did it about 1/2 inch, and then I went ahead and made the underarm go up 1/2 inch to make up for where I lifted the shoulder. The sleeves are just the size 4 sleeves. I didn't have to change those since I made up for what I took out on the shoulder here. And then everything else, it was a matter of letting in the darts, or taking in the darts slightly. And then, so I basically figured out that I measured my waist, and my front waist is bigger than my back waist, which is what was making it kind of bag out in the back. So I took in more in the back to make up for that. So other than like the little tightness right here, I think it's pretty good. I found that a lot of the tightness I was feeling was the arms being too tight. Like I didn't have like range of motion in my arms. This is the original sleeve pattern. This is the altered one. And with the altered one, I can move my arm more, but it did make it longer, while I could hem this up and give it a more similar look to this. I wanted to see if I could figure out how to do that on the pattern piece so that I can reproduce the results and figure out how to make a mobile arm. I like to move my arms in my clothes. I did make a lot of progress learning how to fit a dress on my own, but at some point I realized I need more information. So rather than spinning my wheels trying to figure it out on my own, I've decided to set this one aside and take a bodice sloper class. Things that I learned on this project, construction-wise, are I got more practice installing an invisible zipper. There are more things to consider when installing a zipper that is a dress length rather than a skirt. I used a tutorial by Judith D. I also drafted a Peter Pan collar and installed it. And for the installation instructions, I used a tutorial by Miss So to get the construction order. The good things about this project, I'm a little closer to recognizing what makes me anxious on a project and how to combat it. I've learned that when I'm feeling anxious, I need to take baby steps on it. I'm not going to let myself quit when it's irrational anxiety, but I will slow down. I need to have a logical reason for wanting to move on to something else. I got pretty far with the fitting and I'm pretty happy with that, and I also liked how the Peter Pan collar turned out. Originally, I was going to go through all the projects in the Love at First Stitch book. However, the book focuses on construction techniques and does not teach fit, which is the first thing I want to work on. I have enough basic sewing skills, and I'm sure I will learn more along the way and collect more techniques as I get practice, but I want to get the basic fit down first, because otherwise, like as I've seen in the past, I just won't be happy with anything I make if I can't wear it. So next up, I'm actually working on a bra class online. I know it's a little ambitious, but that's what I'm working on next. And then after that, I'm gonna do the sloper class, and then I will get back to making projects. I wanna have at least a foundation in fitting garments before I go back to trying to collect more sewing techniques, which I'm sure I have a ton to learn, but I think that I have more abilities than I realized, and I at least have the basics down at this point. See you in my next diary.